Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and for this week's Sunday Sit-Down video, I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite travel-friendly games. A few things that I thought about with this category are games that don't take up a lot of space, games that scale from different player counts, unless you're just traveling with one other person, which often happens, so two-player games might be more relevant there. The amount of surface area the game takes up, the speed, the length of the game. I think it can work faster games generally can work faster when in travel situations where you don't know exactly how long that you might, say, be sitting at an airport restaurant or at the airport, things like that. And generally games that have cards in them and not a lot of components that you could lose while you're traveling, making the game unplayable. So let's jump right into the list. I have some honorable mentions that came through from some of the ambassador suggestions that we had, including Bonanza, which I think would be a great travel game, Star Realms, which we did travel with last year. It's a very small box, works great for two players, but I have another game on the list that I think scales up a little bit better that I'll talk about. Deep Sea Adventure, which probably could make this list easily, but I could see you losing some of the dice while you're playing. And Fox in the Forest was one that was suggested. All great ideas. But let's jump into the top 10 right now. And the top 10, I actually own most of these games except for this first game, and that is Legacy of Dragonholt. This is a choose-your-own-adventure game, essentially, where you are mostly going through different storybooks and making decisions based on your character's abilities as you move through a wonderfully, not illustrated because there are no illustrations in the game except for the map, which is awesome, but a wonderfully written fantasy narrative. And I found that this game works well even while you're driving. Not if you are sitting there reading the book while you're driving, but if you have a passenger or multiple passengers in a car, one passenger could be reading the book and other players can be making the decisions. You don't need a surface at all to play this game because there is no die rolling or anything like that. No tableau building, nothing like that. So I think I really wanted to put this game on the list, even though it's probably the biggest of any of these games. It doesn't take up a lot of space because it's just some booklets, and you can play literally while you're driving. I think the one downside here is that you do need to be able to hear each other while you're doing this. So if you're at a crowded airport, it might not be the best scenario, best place to do it. But in the quiet moments in the car or while you're maybe in your hotel or Airbnb, I think Legacy of Dragonholt is a great travel-friendly game at number 10. My number 9 favorite travel game is, or game that I think would be very travel friendly, is the first of two games from Button Shy Games, which make very slim games to fit into your pocket even. This is Hierarchy. This is a wonderful two-player game, one of my favorite two-player games now that I need to play more often. I haven't played it in a while, but I got to borrow it, and I can't wait to play it again. But you're basically just ordering cards, or playing cards back and forth so that the card that you play is higher than the other person's card, or the previously played card, unless you have a rule on your card that breaks that rule, and you're trying to play the cards from your hand such that the opponent can't make a play. So they can't make a play. You know exactly what's in your hand. You know exactly what's in your opponent's hand, I believe. I don't think there's any mystery as to cards that are left out. Maybe there's one card that's left out, something like that. But you pretty much have perfect information, and you're making decisions based off of that to kind of entrap your opponent to a place that they can't actually play a card. It is a great two-player game, and it's so slim and quick to play. It doesn't take up a lot of surface area that I definitely think it belongs on this list. That's Hierarchy at my number 9. I did put it a little bit lower on the list because it only plays for two players. Only plays two players. My number 8 on the list is Tussie Mussie, the other Button Shy game from designer Elizabeth Hargrave, who also designed Wingspan. This is a I Cut You Choose game with these beautifully illustrated flower cards, and I love I Cut You Choose, so I definitely gravitate towards Tussie Mussie. It scales up really well, up to 4 players, I believe, and it's just a wonderful little delightful I Cut You Choose game. It also teaches really well, which I think works well with travel too. In my travel experiences, we don't often end up playing games with complete strangers, but this is the type of game that I think if you were playing with one other person and someone else said, "Hey, what are you playing? What are you playing there?" You could easily teach someone and play around with a complete stranger for 5-10 minutes, and it would be easy to teach, easy to learn, easy to bring someone in just for a few minutes and have fun with that. So I think Tussie Mussie belongs on my list for sure at number 8. My number 7 favorite travel-friendly game is Love Letter. Love Letter, I mean, doesn't even need a box this big. You could probably put this in a little Ziploc bag. This is the Hobbit version of the Love Letter, of Love Letter, which I think is a nice little twist involving the one ring. So in Love Letter, you're trying to have the highest card in your hand at the end of the round. But if you have the one ring, you also win the round, even more than the highest card. There's a lot of fun little interactions in Love Letter. There's deduction when you're trying to figure out what other players have or don't have. And I love that you can play Love Letter in 5 minutes. Like I think it says so in the box, 5-minute fun. You can easily play a round of Love Letter and just end it after that if you have to get moving again. Or you can play another round or another round. And you could say, okay, we're gonna try to play best of 3. Or we can just play 1 game or 2 games. It's very scalable in terms of the number of games that you actually play of Love Letter. I think that really works well, including the small box, for a travel-friendly game. And plus, if you're traveling in New Zealand, you got to bring the Hobbit Love Letter and play it along while you're there. So that's number 7, my number 7 favorite travel-friendly game. My number 6 favorite travel-friendly game does require a little bit more surface than the other games, even though it is a very small box, and that is Sushi Go. I love this drafting game. You may not even recognize this box, because this is like the original Indiegogo copy from Adventureland Games. Now I think a completely different company has it. But yeah, this is my original copy, and I like how small it is, how tight of a game it is, and just the drafting and the tableau building as you play. I have fun with it. I love Sushi Go, especially this version. Sushi Go Party is great if you want more variety, but I think this version just works well for sitting down and playing a game for a few minutes. So Sushi Go doesn't take up a lot of space, more space than some of the other games though. It's number 6 on my list for travel-friendly games. My number 5 favorite travel-friendly game, so this is the Star Realms replacement. I chose this over Star Realms, even though I have traveled with Star Realms and had a good time with it. It doesn't take up a lot of space, it plays quickly. It just Shards of Infinity. This does everything Star Realms does, but it adds one extra element of this mastery mechanism that I've talked about in a lot of different videos. And it is a 2 to 4 player game, even 5 with the expansion. I'd mostly want to play this as a dueling game, but I like the idea of bringing this game along on a trip when you have more than 2 players, so that if you have one other person who just wants to duel with you, you can play a dueling game. Or if you want to play with a larger group, you can easily bring in more people and play with 4 players or 5 with the expansion. So I think that's why I give it a little bit of a nod over Star Realms, even though I think Star Realms does travel extremely well. That's Shards of Infinity at my number 5. My number 4 favorite or travel-friendly game that I think, a lot of these are games that I think would travel well, I haven't actually traveled with them, is The Mind. The Mind is a cooperative game where you're trying to play cards without communicating in sequential order from least to greatest, from 1 to 100. And the game escalates as you play. You start out with 1 card in hand, and you just have to play them in order, and then you have 2 cards and 3 cards and so on. And the lack of communication in the game brings this really nice feel of syncing together with other human beings as you play. It's super easy to play and learn. You can play for a few minutes, or you can play for 30 minutes, and it doesn't take a lot of brain power. Sometimes you're pretty exhausted while you're traveling. So I like some of these games that are just kind of relaxing. You don't have to do a lot of thinking to play them while you're traveling. It also takes up hardly any table space. The Mind, I think this is a fantastic game to travel with. Number three on this list, I have Cartographers. Maybe the second biggest game on this list, because it actually does take, you could not really make this tighter than the box. I mean, the pads of paper take up quite a bit of room in the box. Cartographers is a map-making game where you are trying to achieve various goals based on a card drawn and shown to all players by marking it on your map. All you really need here is a pencil, a piece of paper that's found in this game, and then the cards on the table themselves, but it doesn't really take up that much table space. This is just a wonderful game. This probably should have been on my top 10 list of 2020, or so far, the list that I posted recently, but I totally forgot that I had played this over the last 6 months, which was the requirement for that list. But I love Cartographers. It's a wonderful game. It has a wonderful little interaction that you don't see in a lot of, this isn't a roll, it's a flip and write game. But there's this little interaction where at some point in the game, you might have to pass your entire map that you've been working so hard on to the player to your left or your right, and they get to draw a monster on that map that forms a different polyomino shape, and they pass it back to you, and you get to see how they messed up your little map. But you do that around the table, so you're doing that to someone else. It's just a little twist, a little bit of interaction in the game that otherwise doesn't have a lot of interaction. I think that's a nice, great little twist in Cartographers. My number 3 favorite travel-friendly game. My number 2 favorite travel game is one of my favorite filler games, period. And actually, I wanted to put Cartographers on this list because it's not a filler game. It's a little heavier. I think that's great. Fantasy Realms is a filler. Doesn't take very long at all. This is a combo building game. You build so many satisfying combos in this game in your hand. You start out with a hand of cards, and you're ending up with a different hand of cards of the same number of cards, 7 cards in hand. And you're trying to create these combos between the cards that you have. And some cards will hurt you. Like, you want to get rid of certain cards because they don't combo well with other cards. And you're looking for other cards on the table. Doesn't require a lot of space at all on the table, but you're looking for certain cards or drawing from the top of the deck and hoping for a card that combos really well with what you have in hand. This is just an amazingly satisfying game to build these combos and have the satisfaction of creating this something from nothing, or even sometimes starting with something really powerful and trying to keep that combo throughout the game without messing it up with a card that might otherwise apply a penalty to one of your best combos in hand. Highly recommend this game. I think it would travel very well. That is Fantasy Realms. And really, you only need the cards. I don't think you need the score pad in this game. You could just score on your calculator, your phone calculator. My number 1 favorite travel game is so new to me, but I've just been having a blast with it, and that is The Crew. I think The Crew would travel extremely well. It scales up to 5 players, which I think is great for traveling, if you're traveling with a larger group. It does scale down well to 2. I've really enjoyed the 2-player variant with Megan. And it has this really nice sense of progression that I don't see in any of these other games. I think all these other games are highly replayable. But The Crew has this mission-based system where there are 50 missions that you're going on. So if you're going on a 1-week trip, you might bring out the crew for a few missions every night. And over the course of a trip, you have this experience of also going on this journey through the crew by making these missions that get a little bit harder every time you play. Just slightly different rules, slightly different requirements. For example, the very first mission is that you have 1 task to complete. This is a trick-taking game, and so it means a cooperative trick-taking game at that. And so it means a task is a certain card that one player has to claim that task at the beginning of the game, beginning of the mission, and they need to make sure that they win a trick that has that card in it. So if the task is a green 7, and I claim it, I need to make sure by the end of that mission, or at some point of that mission, that I've claimed the green 7. And the mission ends as soon as you do that. You don't have to continue to play it. So you don't have to play out your whole hand of 13 cards. You just play until you accomplish that task. And then you play a slightly harder mission, slightly harder. I just love the idea that you can play these really, really short games that end as soon as you accomplish the tasks, and that you can escalate these missions over the course of a longer trip. I can't wait to travel with this and to see if we have that sense of adventure and progression over the course of the trip that I've experienced while playing 2-player with Megan. That is The Crew, my number 1 favorite travel-friendly game. That's my list. Those are my top 10 favorite travel-friendly games. I'd love to hear your thoughts on your games that you have traveled with, that you think travel really well, or games that you look forward to traveling with because you think they would travel very well. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments about that or any games that I mentioned today that you have thoughts on. Thanks.